Peace and much love, Zin Uru here. Welcome to the latest message from the Minista. This week's message from the Minista is our ability to respond. And I have a kitten running around here. If I put her in the back room, she's going to be meowing really loud, and you can actually hear it on the mic. And so I will be performing. This is my ability to respond, my responsibility to the kitten. I'll show you her in a minute. Her name is Missy, but she is quite the new responsibility, which I am joyfully participating in and performing this responsibility here. Say hi to everybody, okay, so they can see. This is the great distraction of the house. This is little Missy. Yes, she's really cute. She's really cool. You go over that way. But I have a cord, chasing the cord around. And if I put her in the back room, she just starts screaming, "Meow, meow, meow." So she will be a distraction and a welcome distraction of that, because she puts a smile on my face. And in life, we all have responsibilities, right? And some of those responsibilities, like a kitten, we take on for ourselves, or we help somebody out. And see, now get over it. You see, now she's sniffing around the camera. We have these responsibilities in life that life itself is a responsibility, and the responsibility really breaks down to our ability to respond. And so this week, I just want to talk about the basics of, being prepared for when the situations arise. That has something to do with our ability to respond. The level of skill that we're at has a lot to do with our ability to respond. Where our mind is at, where our heart is at, how we feel about ourselves, how we physically feel. A lot of these things have to do with our ability to respond to certain situations in our life. And I want to welcome you all here. It is a great honor to have you here. It is my full honor. I welcome each and every one of you here every week. I see you all. What a great time to be alive. What a very interesting time to be alive. What a very important time to be alive, and what a very serious time to be alive. And saying that it is time to be alive is also saying that in the spirit, there is no time and space. Everything is here in the ever-present now. The so-called future, the so-called past, even the so-called present is all here in this one everlasting now, in this moment. And this moment never leaves. We can leave this body, but the moment is still there, and we will still be experiencing that moment, that everlasting now, beyond this body and through other bodies and other lifetimes and other dimensions. So, I really look forward to what this message is talking about this week, because I think that a lot of people have forgot what their responsibilities are, or want to avoid actual responsibility, And who can blame them if the computer offers a new way of doing something that you used to have to be responsible for? Now the computer can remind somebody, or the computer can do the work that a man used to do, or a robot can take care of the responsibilities that somebody used to take. And even simple things like the house, right? It used to be the responsibility of the household where I grew up that we had to either vacuum or sweep up the house. Like, all of us were responsible for that. We're sweeping up the garage, sweeping up the deck, whatever it was, we were responsible for sweeping it up and keeping it clean. And now they even have a robot now that, goes around and vacuums the floor. And, I don't have anything to say either way about that. It's just something very interesting that a responsibility now, it used to be, well, at least where I grew up, the household's responsibility to clean up, now is becoming the responsibility of a robot. We're seeing that a lot with the automated cashier systems at the major corporations and fast food and those type things. And so, it's getting to be where in the future, they're already showing that you have to have this green pass in parts of Europe. They took away the responsibility of the human, but they're also taking away the human interaction. So, when you used to go shopping and you go to a store, there'd be human one-on-one interaction with the cashier, or with that other person who's assisting you to get that, and then they get their wage to live, and so on and so forth. And but a lot of those jobs are being taken over by robots, and they used to be called menial jobs. And I don't know anybody who's ever worked those kind of jobs. I have. There's nothing menial about that kind of work. It's very important work, and it's very underappreciated work. And, I see more people frustrated when I go to a Home Depot or if I go to a Costco and people are just, and there's not enough cashiers there and everybody's having to ring things up themselves because there's questions that people have. The card doesn't swipe right. And then you got to wait for one person who's serving like 4 people. And, you start losing that humanity there. And even on a whole deeper level, if a computer is told to turn you away from the store, if you don't have your green pass or your smart pass or your, you don't have the right social credit score on your phone, this is what they're designing. They design these things and systems in China. They're working on them in Australia. They're working on them in parts of Europe as well. And the idea is that the computer is told who can and can't serve. So you take the human element out of it. So, the human element is no longer there. It's just a cold robotic state of being. So there's no more human responsibility there. Because when a human denies you food or a human denies you services or a human denies you of something, that human is responsible for what they're denying, in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the universe and the laws of justice and the universal laws. If a man is hungry and starving and somebody denies that man bread, the person who denies that man bread is responsible for that man's hunger and that man's starvation. But a computer, who is the computer accountable to at that point? Who is the robot accountable to at that point? Who's responsible and who has the ability to respond to a robot? You don't teach a robot. A robot does what it's programmed to do. And in a lot of ways, that's what humans have become. We're becoming like these cyborg type creatures that are always interacting in some way with technology. And the more we interact with technology, we're giving up our human responsibilities in favor of handing over certain sovereignties, certain jobs, certain responsibilities to the computer. Even basic computing, like the word computer is a computations. It used to be people's responsibilities to take good written records and bookkeepers and, figure out whatever, the different budgets were going to be and what was the net and what was the gross and who how to get paid and who had to, all the workers who would get paid or what, the whoever needed to get paid, the gas bills, the electric bills, all those things used to be written in ledgers, right? And it used to be somebody's job to do that. Now it's still somebody's job to keep that into data entry, but the computer does all the computing now. The person is no longer responsible for the computing. The computer is responsible for the computing. And when we start getting the trillions and zillions and all these like super numbers that a human mind can't even really comprehend or computate, and we start getting to AI algorithms and the AI can start doing things that the human can't see. And if the AI has been given the responsibility to lord over the human at that point, and the human has given up their own responsibility and handed it over to the computer and to the system, then there's no such thing as humanity at that point. Now, there's always going to be humanity, but follow what I'm saying. The one who gives that responsibility over to the computer loses a piece of their humanity each time until all the humanity's gone. Now, I don't feel that nature's going to allow that to happen or God's going to allow that to happen. But when we really start thinking about it, when we really put our sight to it, we should really ask, where is all of this heading? Because that is our responsibility. Where is all of this heading, and what are we doing about it? How are we guiding the future with our responsibilities, with our power and our ability to respond to the environment? What are we preparing the future for? What are we preparing the future for our people as hip-hop for? And when I say hip-hop, I'm talking about every so-called tribe, every so-called race. I'm talking about every so-called religion. That we're all under this unique firmament, this dome, this umbrella. We're all underneath that together as one people who are experiencing life here on earth in such a way we can see beyond the boundaries of race and religion. We can see beyond what the system is teaching people how to respond to each other, because we can see that if we take action now, and if we start performing our own responsibility towards one another and towards hip hop itself, we can start navigating and creating a future collectively that it doesn't matter what anybody else in the world is doing. It doesn't matter what the so-called Illuminati is doing. It doesn't matter what the government's doing. But for that to happen, we have to be autonomous. We have to completely be free. Because if they're giving to us and we're taking from them, we are then behooven and beholden and responsible to what they give us. This is why we create our own. This is what we create our own with. And we have a lot of tools to create with. We have a lot of tools to create our sovereign nation with. But what we don't have right now at this time is enough of our people awake to their responsibility towards hip hop itself. How many, really think about it, okay? And I'm going to include pioneers in this. I'm going to include the so-called fathers and mothers, and not disrespecting anybody. The appreciation is there forevermore. But how many of your favorite, how many of your favorite rappers, how many of your favorite MCs and your favorite pioneers and the favorite historical figures, how many of them actually feel responsible to you as a hip-hopper? How many of them actually feel responsible to hip-hop culture itself, let alone the consciousness of hip-hop? How many of them actually feel responsible? And when I say feeling responsible, that when something attacks or comes into hip-hop, that they have an ability to respond to that, but also the responsibility that comes with nurturing, developing, guiding, directing, teaching an entire group of people about who they are and what we are. Last week, on the cat is just hilarious over here. You know, in the audience, y'all could pet her. She's walking around the audience right now. she is lightning quick. She literally just circled the entire room in 1 second. I was going to say, last week, the teacher was talking about, I think he was reading from the Inner City, and talking about that, or the seasons in the gospel of hip hop, talking about that, you know, the gospel of hip hop isn't really written for those of us who were working on the gospel of hip hop. Well, he was right in it. We were working on putting that book together. You know, I'm an recognized intellectual and spiritual contributor to the gospel of hip hop. I was there while it was being written. And so while it was being written, we used to have this conversation, the teacher and I, and he mentioned this last week on the Sunday weekly call. And he said, Zin, ask Minister Zin about this. And it says at the end of the gospel of hip hop that it's really not written for our time. It's really not written for our generation. It's written for our grandchildren's generation. And our grandchildren are just now being born. It's the generation that's being born right now. And then those of us who see the sight and have the vision, we're really blessed in a way, but we're also burdened with that because we can see like, if we would just wake up our people who are in their 40s and 30s right now, we could just wake them all up and just really see what this is, what we're talking about with, you know, hip hop culture. If they could just see the bigger vision here, and hip hop, if we could just have it overnight, you know. But we also foresaw, and we used to talk about that, like, you know, it's really for the generation that's coming, not even our kids' generation, which is the ones in their early 20s right now. Although there'll be more of those in their early 20s right now, I already know y'all who take the consciousness and the culture more seriously. You'll be the ones giving birth to the next generation. You're going to give birth to the hip-hoppers who really live and breathe hip-hop as a culture. Because there won't be the American mainstream. It's already fallen apart. That doesn't exist anymore. You know, all the enticements of the world that used to tempt hip hop, they'll be there in some form or fashion in the future. But when you call yourself hip hop in the future, you're really going to mean it. It's not going to be it. It will always be seen as some kind of mainstream because hip hop is always influential like that, at least rap music and the beats and the rhythmic styles of rapping. But when it comes to saying hip hop and hip hop culture, our underground is huge and is thriving. But not a lot of us in my time actually take the responsibility towards hip hop itself. And it really looks like hip hop itself, its consciousness, its awareness, its God, being responsible, performing responsibility for our culture. In the same way, I'm looking out for that kitten running around, That kitten, I have to teach that kitten certain responsibilities, like that I should be able to come in here and speak as she matures, and she's not going to tackle the light system and play with the cord or zip around the room, But at her immaturity right now, she doesn't really see that. She doesn't have the sight. She doesn't understand right now. So she'll learn. The same way with the culture, That's the way God is working with the culture. And really, hip-hop is working with the culture itself that is itself as hip-hop. It's performing responsibility as a loving parent to a group of people who don't really understand that they have a responsibility to that culture. But as the new generation comes, and these kids who are being born right now, we'll be able to look at them as they're growing up, and they will be inherently given a responsibility. They'll learn about a responsibility to something bigger than themselves, God willing. And then their ability to respond to their environment and the changes and the situations and the adversity that they're going to be faced with, those challenges and adversity they'll be faced with in the future, they'll actually have an ability to respond to that. And what is this we're talking about? Because, when we talk about hip hop, something that's always fascinated me about my fellow hip hoppers out there, and something that the world doesn't really understand about us, but we do overstand about one another, is that we are multi-talented, multi-skilled individuals. And what do I mean by that? When I used to work in the world, I was always an anomaly because I had so many interests. I had so many things I'd be studying, so many different things I'd want to be doing, everything but working. But when I was in that world, that generation, that working generation that I was around, or, the older generation that I was around most of the time, my parents' generation and kind of the one in between that, they would have their job as a definition that would define them, and then their hobby. Like this guy I work with, Jim, his job as a warehouse manager, that was his identity, literally, that was it. He was a warehouse manager. And then he had a couple hobbies on the side, really just one hobby and a bunch of bad habits on top of that, right? So he had one hobby and a bunch of bad habits, and then that was his complete identity, And that whole generation was like that. So when you said to somebody, "Who are you?" "Oh, or what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a warehouse manager." And that's for people who aren't hip hop, that life makes sense. I'm one or two things, that's it. I've got a couple things that will describe me, but that's it. Your brain don't got to think more. I'm this or I'm that, and you ain't got to think more. But with hip hop, with me, even, I use myself as an example here, and you all can relate. Like, I'm an engineer. I'm a recording artist. I'm a performing artist. Just on MCing alone, I record myself. I make my own videos. I mix myself. I master myself. I don't make my own beats yet. I've made beats, but I don't produce my whole album's beats yet. And but that's just not all I am. I'm not. If somebody says, I'm going to just say, I'm Zin Uru. I'm an MC. First off, what's a Zin Uru? What's an MC? What's a minister? There's 4 or 5 things right there, Or say some people would say, "Oh, I'm an atheist," or "I'm a Christian," and that would go along with their job and stuff, and maybe add one more dimension to certain people, in their spirituality and that other type of world there. But in hip hop and hip hopia, I want to know about water. I want to know about hygiene. I want to know about health. I want to know about how my blood circulation is. I want to understand alkalinity. I want to know what it means to what electromagnetic fields on the earth resonance is. I want to know about crystal technology and the tree of life. I want to study the Holy Bible. I want to understand the Tao Te Ching. I want to understand, the Bhagavad Gita. I want to have the latest research on, on epigenetics. All of these things go into the mind of the hip hopper. So I can't say I'm just any one thing because I know of myself as a multidimensional being, and I'm sure most of you can see that. And maybe some of you are experiencing right now that, like, the rest of even the people in your immediate environment aren't like that. And maybe there is a part of their soul that really is that, and they just haven't tuned in or turned that on yet, turned up the volume on that yet. But what does that say about you and your uniqueness in this time? And remember, our uniqueness is where a lot of our troubles begin. This is where a lot of our troubles begin. And, I just think about all of the times in life that people just looked at me like, what are you doing? I've had so many people just be looking at me and asking me, what are you doing? Especially when I'm running, my name is Zin Uru. The hip hop is the promised land. That's my teacher, KRS-One. We are the temple of hip hop. I'm a minister. I'm an MC. I broke free of the matrix. I saw the light. I saw the light. No more darkness, no sorrow inside. Look at that like it's crazy. And for them it would be crazy, but for me it's normal. For us it's normal to have a multidimensional state of being. But as we open up to these multidimensional states of being, we have even more responsibility to maintain, develop, and preserve our multidimensional state of being. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just go with, a couple of the main three. We have the physical body. That's a state of being. The physical body is a dimensional state of being. And so we have certain responsibilities to the water in our body, to the foods that we eat, to even the thoughts that we think that affect the physical body, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the exercise, the movement, the vitamins and minerals that we take. All of that comes into our responsibility of our body in that dimension and our ability to respond to that in this dimension. And the ability to respond to that in the physical dimension is that as we eat healthy, our immune system gets stronger. So then when disease comes our way, our immune system is already healthy and ready to fight off that disease. We don't have to try and boost our immune system to fight off a disease if the immune system's already strong and ready to fight off that disease. It's like a martial artist, right? Same thing with the physical body. It's our responsibility, especially in the, in where the martial arts were born, it was considered a human's responsibility to defend themselves. You didn't have no cell phone to call the police, and they had a police cruiser out there, which never happens, but but the idea, like, people walk around because they think that a cop could be there a phone call away. Back in the day, they didn't have that. You had to be able to use your dukes, right? You had to be able to defend yourself. And so, a martial artist might train martial arts their whole life, preparing the body, taking the responsibility to the body to defend themselves, and only need to use it one time. But they took that time, and now their ability, see, here's the responsibility. They took the responsibility to their body, and then when the fight comes to them, their ability to respond to that fight is automatic. It's muscle memory, it's kinetic movement and muscle memory, because they prepared for that. That was their responsibility, and that was their ability to respond to that situation by being prepared. So that goes with the health of the body. Then we can take that to another dimension, the dimension of the mind. Past, present, and future, everything exists, what we call spirit. A lot of what we call spirit is actually the mind, right? Because remember, spirit is energy. There's mental energy, there's physical energy, there's soul energy, there's all these energies. We read about this, I was thinking about this on a past message to the Minista many, many months ago. We talked and we read that energy is spirit, and spirit is energy. What we call energy is spirit, and what we call spirit is energy. It's the same thing. And so our mind can see in all these other different dimensions, right? And past, present, and future is this wonderful time traveling device and can imagine all of these things, but we have a responsibility to our mind as well. And what is that responsibility? Well, instead of feeding, we feed the body good foods, we need to feed the mind healthy thinking. We need to feed the mind healthy thoughts. We need to feed the mind healthy programs. And I don't want to say programs, but the mind is very programmable. It's just how it is. The computer is kind of like our way of seeing kind of how the mind works. And the mind is, through affirmation, through certain affirmations, we can reprogram the mind. We can, install new prompters, and we remove the prompters, and theta healing works great for this. And there's just so many different techniques and things, and some of them work better than others. But the point is that how people take care of their body, we also have those techniques to take care of the mind. That's our responsibility to our mind. And see what I'm saying? This is multidimensional. We go from the physical to the mental, and now let's go to the spiritual health. We have a responsibility to our spiritual health as well. And a lot of the spiritual health has to do with the mind. A lot of the physical health has to do with the body and mind, but these all work together. The spirit's not going to feel healthy if the body feels sick. The spirit's not going to feel healthy if the mind feels ill. The mind isn't going to feel healthy if the body feels sick. The mind isn't going to feel healthy if the spirit feels sick. You see, for the optimal performance of all of these, it's really just one thing. Really, it's just one thing. It's just one experience, one being, one wholeness. That's it. But we do understand these different levels of dimension and density, right? So when we get to the spiritual, we have a spiritual responsibility. And what is our ability to respond spiritually to certain situations as they come? And this is where the ultimate responsibility comes in. What is your responsibility to your future self? What is your responsibility to your family in the now, the present, and the future? What is your responsibility to hip-hop now and in the future? To God now and in the future? What is that responsibility? So that when the storms come, or when the adversity comes, or even the blessing comes, let's get real, a lot of people ain't prepared even for the blessing to come. When those things come, are you really prepared for those days to come? What is your ability to respond? That's what it means to be prepared, is your ability to respond. So if the storms of life hit, if you're backpacking, right, and you're well prepared, and you got in your backpack, and all of a sudden just a thunderous rainstorm, it just starts dumping rain out in the mountains. You flip out that backpack, and you got your rain gear, you got your tent and your sleeping bag, and you got all of the things that you need in your backpack to weather the storm of the rain. You're prepared, right? And then the storm passes, and then the sun comes out. You put it all back in the backpack after it dries, put it on, and then enjoy the beautiful, wondrous nature of, the smell of fresh nature after it's rained, and the forest and the sunlight and all the goodness of nature itself. But being prepared, that's a responsibility. If you're going to go out in nature, you have a responsibility to keep your body safe in nature, in the elements of nature. Our ancestors just did this by habit. It was just a habit. They just knew how to respond to nature, and our ability to respond to nature, because nature is our natural habitat as humanity. Do you realize that nature is our natural habitat, and nature, like our natural thinking, is our natural habitat in our mind? And by habitat, I mean, what is the word for freedom? What is the word for this? Because the English language is tricky in this way, because it's the colonizer's language. And so the English language is tricky because we're using metaphysics to think things into existence, but we're thinking in English. And most humans are thinking in Latin, and then Latin as the root word, and then all these other words coming into Latin. Now, I'm not dissing it. We have a lot of words and things and access to certain ideas and concepts through our languages, especially through street language, where we define what the words mean. So when we say something's dope or fresh, we know what that means. But even our very thinking in English can hinder ourselves. And so this is where spiritual responsibility comes in, because the Spirit don't speak no language. The Spirit speaks the spiritual language. The Spirit don't have to speak English. The Spirit don't have to speak Spanish or French or whatever. The Spirit has its own language. And therefore, the Spirit being responsible for us and us being responsible for the Spirit, we learn a new language in life, and then that new language transcends and it reinterprets English for us, or it reinterprets the way we see our environment for us. And so when I use a word like habitat, I'm really talking about our environment. And this environment that we're in, we have a responsibility to it, to this realm. This realm belongs to earthlings. This realm belongs to humanity. This realm belongs to God. And even the word belongs, once again, that shows some kind of ownership. What is ownership? That's just the concept of the colonizer. I'm telling you, that wasn't even a concept. Ownership? What is ownership? Ownership. I own this. I own that. I'm an owner. Own. I own you. I own, But when we really get past that, and we get into like this whole thing, this substance that we call three-dimensional reality is our ultimate responsibility. And people are passing their responsibility of being a human and being responsible for this, for the morphogenetic field of all of this, and handing it over to somebody else at some kind of an institution, and saying, here, you be responsible for the morphogenetic field, and you just tell me what you want me to do in the morphogenetic field, and I'm good. Can I watch the Lakers every weekend? Right on, good. Can I have at least a nice car and a couple kids? Cool, good, I'm good. Can I have a little house? Yeah, good, I'm good. Here's all my time and all my energy. I don't even need a purpose. You just tell me what to do in this little box, in this little grid. And I'll stay in this box, in this grid, as long as you pay me. And then I'll just automatically create the morphogenetic field, this whole thing in your image for you. How about that? See, and that's the way that it works. People are giving their sovereignty to institutions, and therefore the morphogenetic field looks like what the institutions want it to look like, not what the people want it to look like. And there's bleed over. It's not all or nothing. It's not all one way or the other, but we can see that their way is really top heavy. And when we have our natural response as hip-hop, we have our natural way of interpreting the world. We have our natural way of seeing the world. We have our natural way of seeing the earth, the morphogenetic field. We have our natural way of interpreting this and interacting with it that's much higher level than theirs is. I mean, I ain't even going to go there. I ain't going to challenge them right now in that way. Now, can we be responsible to God? Can we have a sense of responsibility to God? And I ask anyone hearing this, do you feel you have a responsibility towards God, the Creator, the great event, beyond mother, father, male, female, like the great event of all of creation, the great wholeness? Do you feel any responsibility to that Creator who created you and sustained you? And if you don't, that's okay, because the question will open up that, yes, you do feel the responsibility. You may just not have been aware of the responsibility that you're feeling. And some of that gnawing on that gut, some of that gut gnawing, some of those things that keep you up at night is actually God calling you to your responsibility, your ability to respond to where we truly are, this magnificent realm, this magnificent field, this magnificent dimension that God allowed to be usurped by these greedy, childish, secret societies and their little mouthpieces. and their inferior metaphysics and their inferior mind and their inferior abilities. God allowed that inferiority to convince the true children of God that they were inferior when in fact their abilities are greater. Let's take a moment and look at these definitions right here, because we're getting really deep. Put it up here on the screen. Our ability to respond. So let's just go right to ability. And shout out to Abel. The story of Cain and Abel. When I was looking at being able today, Abel was able. Abel was able to do things. Abel had ability. And because of Abel's ability, his brother Cain was jealous of the abilities of Abel. And because of that, Cain killed his brother. And so we see that time and time again, that the Canaanite system kills a Martin Luther King, kills a Malcolm X, subverts something like hip-hop, or at least tries to subvert hip-hop culture. We can see that same system happening to the ablest bodies among us. But the truth is that there is no death. The truth is that we are all very able and capable of doing what our Creator has designed for us to do. And when we look at the word ability, we can clearly see through these definitions that even with the English language, we can define ourselves and see ourselves in such a way that our empowerment will change the earth in no time. But that requires us waking up and our ability to wake up. Ability, definition number 1. The quality of being able to do something. The physical, the mental, the financial, or legal power to perform. Definition number 2, a natural or acquired skill or talent. What are your hip-hop abilities? What are your human abilities? What are you able to do as a human, my nobility? Ability, nobility, ability of the nobility. Come on. You see it? You feel it? The quality of being able to do something, the physical, the mental, the financial, or legal power to perform. A natural or acquired skill or talent, synonymous with ability, capacity, faculty, talent, skill, competence, aptitude. Ability, inclination, or sustainability for a specified action or condition. Get those skills up. Get those skills up. Now look at respond, our ability, our skill, our skillful way that we will respond. To respond, to make a reply, an answer. Yeah, here's my reply to this situation. Here's how I answered this situation. I'm able to reply. I have a very able answer for this. To act in return or in an answer. To react positively or favorably. See, there's the response. To react positively or favorably. That's when you have a real ability to give as a reply an answer. In architecture, a plaster supporting an arch. Come on. That's the response. You're holding up an arch. Let's look at this too. We'll go back to, we just did respond. Let's look at response. The act of responding. A reply or an answer. A reaction as that of an organism or a mechanism to a specific stimulus. Wow, what is your response? Like, this gets into the five senses as a response. What's your response to certain smells? Do you have the discipline? If you smell something that you know isn't good for you, but you smell it and it smells good, do you have the discipline? What is your ability to respond to that sense? The sense is a response, and then how will you respond to that response of the sense? The sight, the taste, the feeling, the sound. All of these can tempt us. And not that temptation is even a bad thing. It's here to strengthen us. When we know that temptation is there to strengthen us, we become stronger. A reaction is that of an organism or a mechanism to a specific response. Something that is spoken or sung by a congregation or require an answer of the officiating minister or priest. That's call and response. When I say hip, y'all say hip, hip. When I say hey, everybody say hey. Call and response. Now wave your hands and overstand. Hip hop is the promised land. That's the response. People start waving their hands and overstand. Hip hop is the promised land. Say, oh yeah. Say, all right. Call and response. What is our ability to respond? When God is calling, how do we respond? What is our crowd participation when God says, everybody say, hey? When God says, when I say hip, y'all say, how many people go, ha? When they hear God say hip, how many of us go, ha? What is our response to God? Do we have the ability to respond to God? Call and response right there. When God is calling, how are we responding, Papa? That's the ecclesiastical meaning of response. Something that is spoken or sung by a congregation or choir in answer to the officiating minister or priest or MC. A responsory from neuter past participle of to respond. Responsibility. I got a new song called From What I Know, From What I See, We Got to Take Responsibility. So responsibility, the state, quality, or fact of being responsible. See, when we're going to perform responsibility, and that's where this message is coming from. When we read from the Gospel of Hip Hop tonight, we'll perform responsibility. Something for which one is responsible. I love this. A duty, an obligation, or a burden. And that's why people don't want duty. They don't want an obligation. They don't want the burden. They want somebody else to carry their responsibility for them. No, humanity, you're born with responsibility. And if you're responsible, you're liable to be required to give an account as of one's actions or the discharge of a duty or trust. Look at this, responsible, involving personal accountability or ability to act without guidance or superior authority. Are you responsible on your own? Can God trust you? Can your friends, can your family, can others trust you? Being a source or cause, able to make moral or rational decisions on one's own and therefore answerable for one's behavior. You are answerable for your behavior, my nobility. Each one of us is responsible for who we are on that level. And we will make mistakes. We are not talking judgment here. We're talking maturity and growth. Definition number 5 of responsible, able to be trusted or depended upon, being reliable. See, this hip-hop, if you can be a responsible person, regardless of what your skill set is at the time, if you're responsible, say like you need a job, if you can be responsible enough to show up and be a good character and be easy to get along with and be able to take instruction, the skill comes. If you have responsibility, the skill comes because you feel responsible to that which requires your skill. Especially if somebody's paying you or expecting you to do something and you're responsible to them. Able to be trusted or depended upon, reliable, based on or characterized by good judgment or sound thinking. 7, having the means to pay debts or fulfill obligations. 8, required to render account, answerable. See, responsibility, our ability to respond and being responsible. Wow. What an incredible, I mean, I really enjoyed reading that this week because it opened my mind. Like I was thinking, oh, I know what responsibility is. But when we start seeing what our responses are, and it really gets down to when the universe is calling, when our environment is calling, how are we responding? And when we're calling, how is our environment responding to us? And then when it comes to our responsibility, like we're accountable. A lot of people don't want to be accountable no more. A lot of people don't want to be responsible to God. They don't want the responsibility that comes with spirituality. And that's fine. That's on them. But if you're somebody who really feels really feels the spiritual life coming, right? You feel that, like, you put in the time and the work, right? And you've got this spiritual life, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, yo, man, the more in tune I get with God, and the more in tune I get with nature, and the more in tune I get with myself. The more I get in tune with that, the more I'm responsible to that. The more I get in tune with life, the more responsible I become to life, because life takes on a new responsibility with us. It's a deeper level of relationship at that point. Life is working on our behalf because we're working on the behalf of life. But people don't want that responsibility. Why? Because it's not easy to carry that kind of responsibility around. It's not easy to be able to respond correctly to life when life is interacting and speaking with us as another living being. When we wake up and see that, like, our life is a living being in and of itself, talking to us, communicating with us at all times, we feel very responsible to how we respond to that. Because it affects us both. Our response affects us both, and its response to us affects us both. Because we are really one and the same. Like, my environment, this room, and me are the same thing. At the end of the day, it's all the same thing. And I'm responsible to this environment that I'm in right now. And it's responsible to me. But a lot of people, they'll think, okay, I'm responsible to do the upkeep on the house. I'm responsible for this. But no, I'm not talking about this house and that environment. I'm talking about, like, the environment you find yourself in, the realm, the morphogenetic field we were talking about earlier. The water and the consciousness that we find ourselves in. Like people don't want to be responsible to God in that way. Why? Because it's not easy. But it's worth it because this is what we were created to do. And then when we have a depth of character that can take on that responsibility, and we're able to respond when that thing is talking to us, when God is talking to us, and we have the ability to respond back, then we have these incredible visions and these unexplainable miracles and events. But that's just normal reality. It just becomes that. It just becomes this universal chit-chat going back and forth with God. But who wants that responsibility? If you're one of the people who's working towards that responsibility, you know what I'm talking about. There's an actual weight that comes with that. There's an actual kind of burden, it's kind of strong. It kind of weighs on the heart at times. But it also elevates it, How is a tree? A tree is grown stronger when the wind is blowing it. Its branches become stronger when the storms of life are coming. That's how it strengthens a tree. Same with us. Now, people want to plug into the matrix and the metaverse and give up all responsibility over to Mark Zuckerberg. But not us, not hip-hoppers, not those of us who are saying and making the statement in this time and space, my humanity is not for sale. My humanity ain't giving up for nobody. My humanity is my sovereignty. And you're going to see the revolution will not be televised, but people are waking up to their responsibility, to their humanity. And this is the greatest lesson of this failed New World Order, is that it's shocking people into waking up to our humanity again and really realizing where we are at. But quite frankly, ain't everybody going to make it, right? Quite frankly, ain't everybody going to make it. I'll tell you this, at the time of recording this, for the last 15 days on my Facebook and Instagram feed, for the last 15 days, I have seen either a celebrity or two, even in the same day, pass away, or somebody on my feed having somebody close to them or somebody that they know pass away. For 15 days straight. These numbers are increasing. Something is happening to humanity. And it's not the virus that's killing everybody. We've got to wake up to what's really going on. But what is happening, as more people wake up to that, that's the natural response. When the devil tries to take too much of humanity, humanity's natural response is to wake up. And there's been a slow wake up these last couple of years. But when are we going to actually feel responsibility to the creator of all that is? And quit running around trying to philosophize everything away. And I love philosophy. I'm a philosopher. But too many people are ignoring the evil that's happening in the world with just a quick couple sentences from some book they read or something that they were told in some movie, and they're just kind of brushing away evil when evil's knocking at the door. You can't ignore evil. You can't ignore it. You can't use all these little tricky techniques because it's going to keep coming until we wake up to our sovereign human power through our Creator, through the great event, through God, through our Christ Himself. As we wake up to that, we wake up to our responsibility to that. And we got to wake up. If we don't wake up now, it's like I always say, if we don't wake up now when God's, it's time to wake up. Pretty soon it's going to be, get your ass out of bed. Because pretty soon people aren't going to be able to sleep in anymore. There's not going to be that option. The responsible thing to do right now is to be awake now and be prepared for the days to come. And when they come, you're prepared, just like the analogy of going out in the forest. If you're prepared with the backpack and you got your gear, you're good when the storms come. And I don't know what that means for everybody as an individual, because everybody's case is going to be different. There will be similarities, but the cases will be different. It's different. People going through what they're going through in Australia right now is different than what we're going through in America. There's similarities. It's different. Afghanistan, there's people going through similarities. So they're going through a very different reality in Afghanistan right now than the United States, at least here in Texas and the United States. So everybody should be getting prepared differently, so you will not know how to get prepared unless you're tuned with your God and your Creator. If you feel the responsibility to your God, and your God feels a sense of responsibility to you, then your God will prepare you and you will prepare yourself. You'll be interested in what God's interested in, which is you, which is your responsibility. And in that way, we take care of God because we're taking care of ourselves. We're prepared. Let's take a look at the gospel of hip-hop here, and we'll bring this to a close. Divine Performance 15, Perform Responsibility. And this is the third overstanding the divine performance from the gospel of hip-hop, written by our teacher, KRS-One. Perform responsibility, divine performance number 15. Regularly check your responsibility. This means to regularly check the character of what you respond to. Prepare for what you must respond to, and be mindful as to how well you respond. Ask yourself daily, what is my ultimate responsibility? Have I met my responsibilities? True hip-hoppers always seek to help, which proves their selflessness. True hip-hoppers always seek to uplift, enhance, and strengthen those who rely upon them. Even if it is personally uncomfortable.
The true hip hopper does what is required of him. Such an ability is not for everyone, nor can such an ability even be performed by everyone. Responsibility is a spiritual skill. It is maturity, self-respect, and self-sacrifice that helps to develop the responsibility of the true hip hopper. Without maturity, self-respect, and the ability to sacrifice for others, it is difficult to be a responsible person. This is why many young rap fans start off irresponsible. They simply lack the ability to respond to issues beyond my clothes, my rent, my car, my thirst, and so on. They cannot see past their own individual wants and needs. Self-sacrifice is the essence of responsibility. The Temple of Hip Hop encourages hip hoppers to do what they are supposed to do when they are supposed to do it. Most people are led by their wants and not by their needs. Most people do what they want to do as opposed to what they must do, and this is just irresponsible. Hip hoppers are encouraged to do what they must do first, then do whatever they want to do later. Always doing what is pleasurable and or easy to do sets one up for a weak foundation in life. For there is nothing special about easy. It is the conquering of the difficult that makes one special and even appreciated. The one who goes out of her way to remove a difficulty is respected by everyone. The one who can be depended upon is respected by everyone. The one who makes sacrifices for the good of the whole is respected by everyone. And this is what it means to be responsible. It means that you and others are clear as to where your commitment lies. The attuned hip hopper is not afraid of commitment. In fact, the attuned hip hopper builds a character that demands respect by selflessly performing her commitments and responsibilities. At times, we must even sacrifice for those who depend on us. We will not always like what we must do, but if the greater good depends upon our commitment, then those dependent upon our sacrifice must not be let down. Attuned hip hoppers are dependable people. The attuned hip hopper upholds an image of maturity and can always be dependent upon. Remember, with whatever you must do, if you want to do it, then it is not a sacrifice. It is when you do those things that you personally do not want to do that you are indeed sacrificing. However, to be responsible is to be dependable. Hip hoppers are encouraged to be dependable people, responsible people, committed people. For us, the balanced life is when you want to do what you have to do. And let me tell you, my nobility, when you want to do what you have to do, it is the greatest feeling. Like, I want to take cold showers because I know I have to take them because my body is just so much more vibrant because of the cold showers. It just feels better. And I at first, I didn't want to do it, so I sacrificed, the comfort of the hot shower. This is just a simple, analogy here, but so true. I had to sacrifice the warm water, but it's not even a sacrifice now. I prefer the cold shower now because I want to do what I have to do. And same with anything that we perform discipline on first, we end up wanting to do those things that we're disciplined to do. I want to go for walks daily. I want to do yoga. I want to eat right. I want to listen to intelligent conversation. I want to participate in good things that uplift the community. But I didn't always feel that way. But as I grew into it and I performed the responsibility, I begin to, what does it say here? When you want to do what you have to do. I've just begun over time, I just want to do what I have to do. And I'm sure you can relate. When your responsibilities are a joy to complete, your life is balanced. When you are committed and responsible to something or someone you truly love, when your sacrifices bring you peace and joy, your life is balanced. Charles Kingsley reminds us to thank God every morning when you get up that you have something to do which must be done, whether you like it or not. Being forced to work and forced to do your best will breed in you temperance, self-control, diligence, strength of will, content, and 100 other virtues which the idle never know. Perform responsibility. Oh, perform responsibility to hip-hop, my nobility. When we perform that cat's funny. When we perform responsibility to hip-hop, like all these virtues, all these new things, all these abilities that the hard work that we put in, it gives it back to us. All the hard work I've put into hip-hop, it's given me back a strength of character. It's made me an empowered individual. I've overcome all kinds of obstacles in my way. I've learned more about myself, the nature, and God. I've had greater, deeper relationships with my friends and my family. Like it really, really brings it there. And it's so, I think too many people want to do hip hop and rap for the money, and that's fine. But when you really feel responsibility towards the culture will empower you. When you feel responsibility to God, God will empower you. When you feel responsibility to hip hop will empower you. I'm so thankful for that responsibility over these years that I felt towards hip-hop, even though it's been a burden, even though I didn't want to do it. I don't want to do these every week, but when I do them, I feel so good. After they're done, I feel so accomplished. I feel lighter. I feel more clear. But it's work doing this. But I have to do this. I have no choice. I have to teach, or I feel unfulfilled if I'm not speaking and preaching. I feel unfulfilled. If I don't do these videos, I don't feel fulfilled. And this is the best offering I have for my community as a 48-year-old man. I've just learned some things over time that hopefully I can pass along and will empower the younger people who when I was 20, I didn't have a Minista Zin Uru to listen to. I had KRS-One to listen to. Woohoo! You know what I'm saying? So maybe 20 years from now, if you're 20 right now, by the time you're 48, there will be 20-year-olds who need to hear you and what you have to say, and you better have something to say or they ain't going to want to listen to you. Have something to say for your time on earth. I've been around long enough that when I see grown men who ain't much different from 25 to 48, man, I'm embarrassed for them. I'm embarrassed for them. I'm like, you still drinking the same drink, listening to the same thing, talking that same yang that you've been talking for 40 years. Now, if it's empowerment, I get it, but like if somebody ain't grown in 25 years, there's a problem, a maturity problem. And we just saw hip-hoppers must be mature. We must be responsible. What is our responsibility towards hip-hop? What is hip-hop? I am hip-hop. You are hip-hop. We are hip-hop. How do you preserve hip-hop? By preserving the hip-hop. Well, preservation is a responsibility. So you have a responsibility to yourself, my nobility. As you go forward in your week, what is my ultimate responsibility? Ask yourself about your responsibility this week. And those of us who've taken the responsibility to do the 21-day Divine Performance Challenge that we started on January 1st and are continuing for a few more days, big up. I already know I've already feel the momentum going into this new year. Things are happening fast. Life is moving fast around me. And I'm able to respond to that. I'm able to respond to how fast life wants to move me. Sometimes life wants to slow me down. I'm able to respond to that. Sometimes life wants to speed me up. I'm able to respond to that. That's where it's at, my nobility. Are you hip to your hop? What is your ability to respond? And there it is. Go forward, empowered, my nobility, in peace, love, unity, and safely having fun. Health, love, awareness, and wealth, peace, and prosperity. And there it is. Hip!